Hello, hello, hello. I decided I was going these are like car confessions. So once a week I go wash my clothes at the laundromat. My name's Michelle. Hello, hello. I feel like I'm real close to this camera. Let me move back a little bit. So yeah, I look nice, hot, and sweaty because I'm out on the West Coast. It's hot as Hades. This is like my sauna in the car while I wash clothes. So anyway, I was just watching a lady's video and she was talking about how she has 90 real estate, like she has 90 properties, but she still can't quit her job. And some of what she was saying I could totally relate to, and then some of it was like, okay. And so she touched on the fact that there's a lot of people out in this real estate space who make it seem like all you have to do is buy the property, get a property manager, and life is rocking and rolling. And that is not a complete lie, except it depends on where your properties are, and most importantly, how you're acquiring the properties and how much they cost you every month. And so I think what happens is, for instance, she has 90 properties and she cannot quit her job yet. Now, I don't know what her personal expenses are and what number she needs to get to in order to do that. But for me, like, I could literally live my dream life with like 5 to 10,000 a month, like just like total budget. If I'm bringing in 5,000 to 10,000 a month, I could make that work. Okay. Now, in my particular case, because I retired early, I am guaranteed my pension. And so that's the first thing that I think people are not being honest about in this real estate space, which is you got to have some money. You got to have some money somewhere other than this. Because she was very accurate in that if you are solely relying on this, first of all, you're making decisions out of stress. You know this is the only way you're going to be able to pay your bills, and so that becomes very stressful. If you're using a property manager, I think what people aren't honest about is they don't have the same investment in your property as you do. Now, I used a property manager for the first 15 years that I had the place, and she was amazing. It was like a friend of a friend. She had her own properties, so it was fine. And I've always been an out-of-state investor, so and this is coming from somebody who is not boots on the ground. I do absolutely nothing other than manage the business from afar. Now, not gonna lie, if we did not have all this technology and these apps, it would make it way harder, but it can be done. So when I think about like people trying to get into the real estate space, the very first thing you need to think about is how am I acquiring these properties and how much do they cost? Because in my case, the first house I have two properties. One is, it was my grandmother's house, and my family sold it to me for $1, and then I took out a loan to kind of bring it up to par because it hadn't necessarily been, well kept at best. Now, because I was new to this, and this was almost 20 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing, and so I kind of made some mistakes that I wouldn't make now. So for instance, I didn't even need to take out 50,000, but the lender I was working with wasn't probably the most honest. They could tell I was very green in this space, so they told me the minimum amount I could take was 50,000, and maybe that is true for a mortgage. However, I didn't even need that much. I could have just taken a personal loan for like half of that, 25,000, because that's really how much it costs to fix it up. So anyway, first you got to look at that. So you have to think the one house I have, my grandmother's house, because of, I didn't know what I was doing. I took out a $50,000 mortgage 20 years ago, and literally the interest rate is like 3 point something. My mortgage payment is $350 a month. Now, knowing what I know now, would I probably have paid it off by now? Yes, but again, I'm learning all this stuff in real time. So first of all, before you get into real estate, think about how much is, if you can't pay cash for the house, then how much is this mortgage going to be? Because then that means that's an automatic, you have to pay that regardless of if the house is rented, if there are tenants in there. This is your baseline. So the second property I got it about 3 years ago, and clearly my business real estate acumen has grown. 5 years ago, when I went from full-time to part-time teaching, I took over the property management duties because I really needed the money. And so before that rental, it was just extra. And unfortunately, because my personal money habits weren't the best, I didn't even do anything with that money. It just bled into my daily spending. Y'all, I'm so sorry, it's hot, but you know, I'm gonna still do this. So the second thing is, when I bought my second property, I was like, okay, I got a plan, because I knew I didn't want to work much longer, and I also didn't want my entire rest of my life connected to like a teaching pension. Because that just wouldn't be enough to live the life that I just really wanted to live. But it's definitely enough to cover my basic expenses. It's about $3,000 a month right now, and then you get like incremental raises. So yes, that's enough to cover my housing, my car note, you know, just basic living. But I really can't do much more than that. Like, you know, I can't travel. I can't really, you know, go to the casino like I like. I can't get weekly massages. So, you know, that's why I need something else to be able to do more than just wake up and pay bills. So for the second property, I was like, I was listening to like a real estate podcast a few years ago. I used to listen to like a lot of them all the time, Bigger Pockets, all that kind of stuff. But I realized once you get in the trenches, like some stuff, it just doesn't match your situation. And it's great for ideas, but once you're in it and you kind of have your idea of what you want this to be, I don't find it necessarily as helpful, because most of the real estate podcasts and all that kind of stuff, or people talking about real estate, it's always about like, how can I scale and how can I grow and how can I get bigger and how can I get more? And, you know, as a self-professed minimalist, I do have a definite enough. And so for me, you know, my thing is like, oh, well, how can I bring in $5,000 to $10,000 a month? And so for me, now that I have figured that out, like I don't need any more properties. Like I figured that out with 2 properties. So like I'm good. So with the second property, once I had decided this, I lived, the real estate podcast I was listening to at the time, like I said, it was like 5 or 6 years ago. It was talking about how instead of renting, if you know you're going to be in a place for about 5 to 6 years, you should just buy a house. Now, this was before the interest rates were crazy. You should just buy a house, because then when you move, you know, ideally, if you're moving in a, you know, halfway decent place, then your house will appreciate and you're almost kind of getting that money back plus some when you sell. So that is exactly what I chose to do. So I bought a house because I knew that my son needed to finish high school. So I knew I was going to be in this house for at least 4 or 5 years. Well, because I think I got the house when he was like in 7th grade. So I knew I was going to be there till at least he graduated from high school. So what happened was, you know, he ended up like moving in with his dad partly through high school. I still had the house also because I had the dog, and I didn't even know I could move to an apartment with the dog, but that's a whole different story. So anyway, I end up selling my primary residence, I want to say three years ago. And because I was in like a decent neighborhood, my house appreciated by like almost 100,000. So I sell the house and I literally net close to $90,000. Now here is a side note about if you can't manage your money, you don't need more money. Because guess what happened? Now I knew in my mind I was going to use that money to buy a house back in my hometown. So I knew that, and I knew that because I was investing in the neighborhood I grew up in, which is considered like low income, I knew the houses weren't going to be that much. So I knew I was earmarking about $50,000 to buy a house in the neighborhood. Okay, well, for the other $40,000, because I was still like trying to make sure like I had good credit, because I was thinking when I bought that house, knowing what I know now, like if I had to do that, I wouldn't have put any money on paying off debt. I would have taken that whole thing and bought the house and used the rest of it to fix it up. But I didn't think that way. I was like, I'm going to buy the house and then I'm going to take out debt to fix up the house. And I'm going to use this cash I have to pay down my debt so I can take out more debt, which even saying it sounds crazy. But if you have grown up living off of debt or being surrounded by people who are in debt, it makes super sense to you. So that's exactly what I did. So I took about 20,000 of it to pay off debt, or pay down debt, pay off debt. Mind you, did not change anything about my behavior, and somehow I magically thought, oh, this is all going to work out. So now, fast forward to now. Credit is trash due to some of the stuff wasn't my thing, but I'll get into that. Just know credit is trash based on the fact that and also I was making that decision when I was still working. So it's almost like I've had these different decisions that are almost trumping the previous ones, meaning when I sold my house and moved into an apartment and bought a property cash in my old hometown, I was still working as a teacher part-time. So that means I was still actively exchanging time for money. It wasn't super stressful because if I needed any repairs, anything like that, it was fine. So once I retired early under disability, then that meant, okay, I'm not getting ready to be exchanging time for money every day. How am I going to get this up and running? And I had helped somebody get a car, which, hey, I know, before people come for me, the craziest thing ever. I put my name, it wasn't even a cosign. I got the car thinking, you know what, this is all going to work out. This person said they can afford it. We good to go. Well, they couldn't. So then they gave the car back, which then means I had to tell the people, hey, y'all got to come get this car because I cannot afford this. Like, you know, I'm under retirement disability. I don't have enough money to cover my bills plus cover this car note. Took it back. So needless to say, credit is trash because now I have a repo on my credit. So then I had to really be like, okay, well, Michelle, if your credit's just going to be trash anyway, it makes no sense to pay these other creditors either because it's not going to help. You may as well use that money to try to fix up your duplex or start saving. So the silver lining of that is now all I use is cash, which, you know, at first was hard. Now I'm like, it's just perfect. So perfect. So now that I have this duplex that I paid cash for, I paid like $35,000 for. Now it needs probably about $20,000 to $30,000 worth of repairs. So now I'm like, okay, how am I get ready to pay, you know, fix this up? And so now I've started doing some supplemental work and I'm using that money specifically for the renovations eventually. Because here's the other part about the people that they don't tell you about real estate. Before you get into real estate, you need some money in the bank. You need some capital reserves so that you're like, okay, even if my properties are vacant, I have, you know, 20,000 sitting in the bank to make up for that, or I have 10,000 or whatever your number is, but you need that. And so for me now, before I even do anything with that duplex, because you figure it's already been sitting for 2 years, and I haven't done anything with it. And that's kind of like the plus and minus of when you're buying in a low income neighborhood, because, you know, it's not like the neighbors are like calling, knock on wood, but nobody's calling the police being like, what's happening with this house? Because there's other houses on the street that are, you know, unoccupied and need, you know, renovations and stuff. So anyway, now the plan is I'm not starting any renovations on that duplex until I have at least $5,000 in reserves for my business. Because right now, the house that I bought off my family from my grandmother, I was doing Section 8. Now I'm doing rent by the room. That's barely breaking even, and it's definitely not going to work if anything goes wrong, because right now that one house is sustaining the rest of my business. So not just the utilities and all that stuff connected to the house, which is a whole different thing, because I went to budget billing, and then budget billing has been the bane of my existence. So the moment I can pay these utilities off, I'm going back to the monthly use, because the problem with budget billing when you're doing rent by the room is they're doing the average, but sometimes there's only one person in the house, which means now I'm paying based on the average, even though that person isn't even using that much gas or that much water or that much electricity. So I'm definitely going back to my other thing. So now that I have a, you know, system in place, operations, I got these different processes. Now I know, okay, you got to have some money in the bank, because, you know, when you have money in the bank, that gives you margin, which means you can make more informed, patient decisions, because you're not like, I got to get somebody in the house. So to the people who are interested in getting into real estate, it's not a bad thing, but do know that it's work. Like, it's not a 9-to-5 work, but it is a work. And to be honest, knowing what I know now, like, I wouldn't do this. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, I'm in it now, and so, you know, I'm gonna roll with it and make it work, but I wouldn't do this, because what people do not tell you about when you're in a real estate investor is, if you are not planning on using a property manager, which I'm not, that means that you are in essence always on call. So while yes, no, I don't show up to anybody's job right now from, you know, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever. No, but what that also means is, like, for instance, last year I took my son on a vacation for his graduation, and it was a cruise. That meant I had to figure out, like, I had to pay for the, like, certain kind of internet access, because I was like, if something happens when I'm out in the middle of the ocean, like, my tenants need to be able to reach me, and luckily nothing happened, but if it had, like, and you know, yeah, there's maybe some ways around that where I guess I could have had almost like one of the people who helped me run my business anyway, because like I said, I'm an out-of-state investor. I use TaskRabbit for a lot of stuff, meaning I have a TaskRabbit person who cleans my room rent by the room rentals, meaning anytime somebody moves out, she comes and does that. She also does monthly cleanings. I have somebody who comes and does like basic repairs, like if the batteries in the front door lock need to be changed, he does that. I found him on TaskRabbit. I have someone who shows the actual rooms when they're vacant, found her on TaskRabbit. But again, these are all things that I had to like figure out. And the reason why, my business has been able to stay afloat is because the acquisition of these properties was so low that even if the house is empty, I could come up with $350 to pay a mortgage. Like worst case scenario, I'm sitting in my car now, I could do Uber. I wouldn't want to, but I could. So just the takeaways from this is, if you want to get into real estate, know first off that if you use a property manager, it is definitely passive. Because I'm not going to lie, for the first 15 years, I did not know the tenants. I still technically don't know them. I talk to them on the phone. That we've never met, of course, because the people I have, working for me interact with them. But first 15 years, all I was doing was giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to repairs. I was not in the day-to-day of, hey, this happened, this needs to be fixed, hey, we need this, hey, somebody's moving. None. I did not handle any of that. So if you are taking the route of property manager, then yes, that is what these people out here on the internet streets are talking about. They're talking about acquire a property and then pay somebody to manage it. Fine. But if you plan on managing it, make sure you understand that you are now taking on a new job, okay? It is not a 8-hour job, but it is a on-call job. And it's for as long as you have these properties, you have to resign yourself to that. And I'm not gonna lie, I've definitely been thinking now that, I'm retired, while the rental income money is definitely going to allow me to live my dream life, I also have to wonder, okay, how long am I going to do this? Because I'm 51 now. I'm like, okay, I definitely got a good 9 years left. I got 9 years in me. So could I be, a real estate investor who's running her own properties or running her own portfolios, managing her own portfolios for the next 9 years? Yeah. However, like after that, like I don't know if I really want to be, if I'm still here at 75, 85, I don't know if I still want to be doing the day-to-days of dealing with tenants and da-da-da. And I know that, yes, in theory, I could go back to a property manager, and who knows, maybe like once everything's up and running, maybe. But I still feel like even if I do that, it's still a certain level of work, because when you use a property manager, what you then miss out on is you're not maximizing your money. Because for instance, if it's my property, then of course I'm calling around 3, 4, 5 places trying to get the best deal. And but as a property manager, that person or that company is going to be managing multiple properties. They don't have time to be like, oh well, let me get the best price for this person. Now they may have built relationships, of course, with different entities, but again, depending on how many properties they're managing, their goal is not to get the best deal, because they could potentially be managing other properties, their own properties. So just keep that in mind. So again, I just want to make this video because I saw the other lady talking about 90 properties and she can't, quit her job. And I totally understand. Now, granted, I feel like if you have that many properties, it's probably something a little deeper that you can't quit your job, which means you may have, the month-to-month maintenance might be too high. So, depending on how her and whoever she's in this with, I don't know if she's doing this by herself or with a partner, like it may be the acquisition of the properties was so high that that's what's making the expenses connected to the business high. Because like, of course, with me, now that I'm just in a different financial space, I've decided I'm not taking out any debt. Even if I could, I'm not taking out any debt to fix up this duplex, which means, in theory, it could, not necessarily, it could take me longer, but at the same time, I would much rather take a little bit more time to fix it up and know that when it's fixed up, that rent that's coming in is mine, and it's just covering capital reserves and utilities, and not that any of it has to go to any sort of mortgage. So that is like my plan on how I feel like I'll be able to manage this and not be super stressed, because and I'm also, for my duplex, I'll be doing primarily Section 8, so there's not a shortage of people trying to find Section 8. So that's the other thing. in addition to acquiring properties, you need to figure out what type of tenant you're trying to rent to, and see, does that work with your market. You know, is it going to be Section 8? Is it going to be rent by the room? Is it going to be, you know, Airbnb? Is it going to be, you know, families? Is it going to be single people? Is it going to be students? Like, you have to know that, because that's going to determine your strategy, and also help you figure out the operations, the day-to-day, the week-to-week operations connected to, you know, your investment. But I just wanted to get on here and just share that. I think, you know, every Thursday while I'm sitting in the car waiting for my clothes to wash, I can share some sort of money insight, so that, you know, while yes, I do my weekly budgets, you know, I would like to share kind of just how this is playing into real life. So thank you, y'all. I swear I am so funny, because I know as y'all watch this, people will be like, why don't you just go in the laundromat? I'm sure it's air conditioned, and it is, but because I'm in a place that's so hot, I've just decided this is like my version of the sauna, because I love the sauna, y'all. And because I'm somewhere where it's just super duper hot, it makes no sense. I don't even think it would be safe for me to go to the sauna. Go in, like, what saunas are like 120 degrees, and then I come out to 100 degrees. So I feel like this is like my cheat sauna day, because this is exactly what it feels like, except you're kind of having fresh air. But the feeling of just, you know, the melting and the reflection is that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and until later, have a great day. Bye bye.